A forest, in order to be alive and breathing, needs to have diversity. And those are the lessons that we can learn from our earth as well, to say, okay, these standing nations that are around me, these trees, look at how they thrive when they're well, when they're healthy. It's when they have that diversity. And we as human beings need to have that diversity as well. We need to understand that our survival and our health depend upon our diversity.
You're listening to Heart of Mind, radio for the new millennium. I'm Kathryn Davis, and my guest is Shannon CrossBear. Shannon is a beautiful, powerful, spiritual Ojibwe Irish woman who articulates her purpose as both demonstrating and promoting gentle healing. She expresses her commitment to healing through her work in the world, through her business, Strongheart Resource Development. That work has included facilitating and consulting with the National Indian Child Welfare Association, the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, Georgetown University, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and participating in the Surgeon General's Conference on Children's Mental Health. Shannon has worked with tribal and non-tribal communities in creating systems of care and circles of care, utilizing traditional intervention and promotion of culturally congruent practices. Shannon CrossBear is a skilled storyteller and educator who cements her commitment to improving conditions for future generations through her activities with protecting the fresh water sources, honoring the circle. She is co-director of an International Children's Month and an active participant in the We campaign. She is and has been a columnist and has written and produced several short plays. So I want to welcome you, Shannon, to this program. I really want to let people know and to have a deeper understanding of your work. So can we start by speaking about yourself and the way that you bring this connection of Native American as well as Irish traditions with the work that you're bringing into the world today?
Wow, that's a really big question. And thanks, Kathryn, and welcome everybody who may be listening. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that we're at a time where that connection to that indigenous knowledge is really accelerating in the world and needed at this time. The understanding of a world view in which we see the world in a relational way. And so I think our indigenous communities, dependent upon how long they have been colonized, have opportunities to kind of go back and reclaim that. And it's important because we need all of that at our disposal as we move forward in our leadership for what comes next for the world. And so when you ask me how does that get expressed in the work that I do, I think it gets expressed differently. I'm actually, depending on the time and the need, and it seems to be all part of the same message of we need to be present, we need to do all of the things that we do, that we collectively can do to bring us into the next story that is being told about the earth and its evolution.
Excellent. And if you were speaking to someone who didn't really have a grasp of some of these ideas, can you tell us how this way of being indigenous, aboriginal, connected to the earth, how can people begin to adopt some of these ideas and understand that connection of life and our planet?
I think it really is about relationship. We care about the things that we're in relationship with, whether it be our family, our loved ones, our children, our pets, the things that we have a relationship with, we care about. And so the first place is to develop a relationship with the earth. And that can be as simple as spending some time in nature, right? We know how healing that is and has been, but it's also healing for nature itself. So I happen to be very blessed by the fact that I live in the middle of the boreal forest in northernmost Minnesota on the largest freshwater source on this continent, which is Lake Superior. And I'm literally just a few feet from the big lake. And that's an opportunity that I have. I'm on a little, not a big, I'm a steward of a property that's about 3 and maybe 3.5 acres, which has literally hundreds and hundreds of trees on it. And those trees are a rich boreal forest, meaning that it's not all pine, it's not all birch, it's not all spruce, that it really is the way that a forest should be. And a forest, in order to be alive and breathing, needs to have diversity. And those are the lessons that we can learn from our earth as well, to say, okay, these standing nations that are around me, these trees, look at how they thrive when they're well, when they're healthy. It's when they have that diversity, right? And we as human beings need to have that diversity as well. We need to understand that our survival and our health depend upon our diversity. And so that's a kind of a societal shift and change that we're in the process of making and understanding.
Excellent. And I think that we all have some kind of natural environment around us. I live in Brooklyn, so my natural environment is a park, but I can still, and everyone can still be concerned about the health of their natural environment and the health of their water resources, because in New York City, not so much recently, but there was a lot of activism around protecting the watershed, of not allowing manufacturing and building and all kinds of plants to be put side by side with our drinking water. And it's always an ongoing fight. But what are some of the things that you see needs to be done with regard to protecting the earth, the drinking water, the groundwaters, and things like that?
First and foremost, we have to stop the drilling, and we have to stop as much as possible of fossil fuels. This has poisoned our watersheds. It continues to do that. And at the same time, we need to be able to identify and create and support clean water sources. So whether it's in the Midwest, where you have chemicals through corporate agricultural practices that have leaked into the earth and created damage in that way, whether you have in larger cities filtration systems for the water that weren't able to take out certain particulates in pharmaceuticals. When they say it's in the water, that is not an abstract comment. That is a scientific fact, that there are particulates in the water for mood-altering chemicals as people flush their medicines down the toilet. And the filtration systems were not prepared, or down the sink or wherever. They were not prepared to take care of that. So it's very important that we begin to understand that from a different kind of construct or relational view, I would say water is life. We know that we're a water planet. We ourselves are made up of 70% water in our bodies and 80% in our mind. If we are not taking care of the water, the outcome for this planet is not good. So, and again, it's a relationship with the water. It can start out as simply as being conscious for people. As you build relationships and determine that maybe you want to be a good relative, then you learn more and you do more. So, but it also involves on every level. I mean, politically, we have to make sure that we are supporting practices. There needs to be climate justice. There's all kinds of avenues by which we will shift the way our relationship with the earth.
And I see also that you have a very deep commitment to work to help children. I would love for you to speak to what's really needed by the children, certainly of indigenous families, but probably applies to children in many communities, especially in the United States.
I would like to see eventually, this is, my what are we looking at going forward, right? How can we learn from the past, reclaim those things that were really good, solid practices, and for ourselves as indigenous people, but also going forward as part of what we would call mending the sacred hoop of humanity. That basically things like, we'll just take it from, there were ceremonies, and maybe they would get expressed differently depending upon your culture, your beliefs, the way that you wanted to manifest that or articulate it in the world. But they, basic things like there's a ceremony called welcoming in the womb ceremony. So the very point at which someone knew that a new child was coming, there was a ceremony to encourage that child, to keep that mother safe. And in today's world, that would mean when we find out that there's a new life coming, we have a way of acknowledging that. And I don't mean a baby shower. I'm talking about acknowledging that and supporting the mother to the point of making sure, like in our traditional ways, it was don't have her around bad things and, make sure that she's safe and that she's cared for and has the nutrition she needs and all of those kinds of things as this child is growing. And today's world, it would be make sure that that mother is not exposed to drugs and alcohol. Make sure that that mother has the support system in place and doing it. So right from the start. And then the next thing that happens is there's a ceremony called the transfer of character ceremony. I guess maybe if in another culture, another religious or spiritual practice, it might be, a godmother, godfather, that kind of thing, a sponsor, whatever. But it really is an opportunity for someone to step in, and the transfer for character is finding the individual whose characters and attributes are such that you would like that child to emulate, right? And that was a ceremony. And then there was a ceremony, there's a Navajo ceremony for the first laugh. So there were times where we acknowledged these very important things about coming into this world as a human being and then continuing on. And I think those practices for our children really need to be reclaimed. Coming-of-age ceremonies. The coming-of-age ceremony from a Western construct right now in the United States is what? It's getting your driver's license, being able to have sex legally, and drinking, right? And joining the service, being able to go to war. So I'm not saying that we get rid of those, but what I am saying is, what would it look like if we really reinstituted, and we've done this in some of our communities, our coming-of-age ceremonies? What would happen if in the coming-of-age ceremonies acknowledge these very important transitional times in our life and gave people support in that? When we brought back our coming-of-age young women's ceremonies, what we see is a reduction in teen pregnancy. What we see is young women who make choices different than they might have made because they've had the time to contemplate and know what does it mean to now be able to give life. What does it mean now to step into my role as a giver and nurturer of life, right? Both physical life, but life in all its different forms. So those kinds of things, I think our youth are really at a time they are so amazingly ready, right, for the world that's coming. And we have an opportunity to support and nurture that. So I believe in our young people. I think what they're doing in terms of the climate, in terms of their voice, in terms of the direction that they're taking, are definitely going to bring us to a good place. Mm-hmm. And I want to support that.
Excellent. And if you had or have, it seems that you would have an opportunity to speak to young people who are already in some ways estranged from either their families, their parents, or school, or the adult world in general, even though some of them may be old enough to be considered adults. Very often I see young people struggling to get a foothold and falling prey to some of the self-destructive behaviors, as you spoke of, that can destroy years of their life, really. What would you say to a young person that they could begin to do for themselves that might help them get back on strong footing with regard to having that deep sense of self and cultural connection to their roots, whatever they might be?
Well, I think, I think that's the role that elders can play, one of the roles that elders can play, and that is to find an elder, but also to know somewhere that you belong. Every one of us belongs, right? And that I see a lot of times with young people, they search for a sense of belonging that can either be positive or negative, right? So, find that sense of belonging and understand that there's a purpose for you. And that's the other thing that happens with coming of age ceremonies, I think, that can be so helpful, and that is to really grasp your sense of purpose on this earth walk, right? So what is your purpose? And so, and that there are opportunities to find those connections, and, they can be through whatever you're called, whether it's a faith-based, whether it's a spiritual practice, whether it's coming home to a community or finding a community. And I would also say if all of that doesn't work, then create one, because we live in community, and that's really critical. To be kind. The science, we know now about the science of kindness. It's not just some elusive kind of, feel-good thing, that there is science, behind what works, whether we're bringing people back from a sense of aloneness that expresses itself through addiction, for example, or through maybe participating in, practices or groups such as negative games, or participating in life in a way that is really setting oneself up against others, such as those young people that are drawn into racist groups. All of those are opportunities, and when you look at each one of those, whether it be the gang, whether it be a skinhead, whether it be, all of them, what is it that they offer? They offer a sense of belonging, right? So finding a sense of belonging in ways that really support life and are life-sustaining, and understanding how we can all contribute to that. I think it's a call not just for young people, it's a call for us as elders, or, however you want to, the older generation that is no longer in child-rearing ages, to really participate in a way that really says, we have a responsibility as well.
Yes, I think that we all have to understand, no matter what, that we have relationship with the young people on this planet, and can be honorary aunties and uncles and grandparents to children who may need that mentorship from us, and when we have the opportunity to do something with that and to seek it out. So I also want to talk about the International Children's Month. You're a co-director of this. as well as being an active participant in the We campaign. Can you speak of the work that you're doing for Children's Month and the work that you're doing at the We campaign, I presume with regard to some of the things we've already discussed?
Sure. So, the International Children's Month, and it's just been a really wonderful opportunity to really be able to have a platform to help kind of connect these young people who are in the world and to celebrate them. So International Children's Month every year has had a theme, right? And that theme, there's been a variety of different themes throughout the different years, right? And it really is about the International Children's Campaign has always been about how we support our children and how we are really allowing our children to also, at the same time, guide us and tell us what the world is going to look like. And we've had lots of folks that have been involved in that in terms of the climate issues and really looking at what I'm just typing something in as we're talking to see if I can help articulate it a little better than I'm doing.
Okay.
Heidi Little, I'll tell you a little bit of the story because that's really been my role with International Children's Month has really been the storyteller, and we've started this year is International Children Love the Miracle because we believe that we're in the middle of the miracle. It's time. Things are changing. They have really shifted in terms of what our focus is and what we need to do, but we're in the middle of a miracle and it gets messy and the children are making it happen. I mean, it is a miracle to have children who are now able to communicate across worlds, across continents, to be able to come together and say, hey, we're in this together. We have to do something because the world that we want is not the world that's being taken care of, right? And so that's a miracle. We're in the middle of it. The We campaign is really about we and unity and the whole idea of we collectively can do what I cannot. So thinking about all these great opportunities that are out in the world that tell us that we're kind of collectively waking up to the reality that the way that we've been doing things up to now no longer serves us. And we have to be moving into a new time of the collective, of understanding our relationship to each other as human beings, but beyond that, our relationship to all of life, to the earth, to the other, what I would call the four-legged and the winged ones and the swimmers and the crawlers and, all of life, and to say, what is our relationship, really, and how do we value that and how do we support that? So the We campaign has found all kinds of things that they're doing, whether that gets expressed through the Caravan for Unity or whether it gets expressed through music and arts and all the different ways that people are expressing that. For my little part of the world, how one of the ways that I'm expressing that is to participate with, I have a story wagon, a little caravan of creation, I call it, to both tell and collect stories about this time and about what's happening. And so that's what I'm going to be doing this summer as we begin to tell the story, as the story unfolds about where we're going from 2020 on.
Well, that's excellent. And would it be too much for me to ask you to tell a story that we could include with this interview?
Sure, I'll tell a favorite story. I really like this story, and um, it's the story about when things were really, really bad in a particular village. And this was happened long ago, and there was this village, and at one point in time it had been a really thriving village, but over the years things had gotten really out of hand. It was, and how it showed up was they used to have really nice gardens, but the gardens were all not very well tended, and they kept losing young people would leave the village and not come back, and so the young people that did remain were disrespectful to the elders, and so they were experiencing a lot of social kinds of ills that were happening in their community. And there were a group of elders and wise people in the community and leaders, and they had all tried different various things to make a difference. They had their circles or their talking circles, which would be like focus groups in the day, and tried to figure out, different avenues and strategies that they were going to use, that they could use to kind of fix this ongoing problem. Otherwise, their community they felt was in jeopardy of disappearing. So this group of elders, there was Growing Flower was among them, and Little Red Bear, and Proud When She Dances, and Strong Lead Wolf, and the one whose voice we hear, and Granddaughter of the Moon. And so they were all part of this kind of leaders' council, this elders' council. And they were bemoaning it. I mean, it was getting desperate. They had tried everything that they could think of. And so finally, when they were meeting one night, they said, the only one we haven't talked to is Good Earth Woman. And Good Earth Woman, she doesn't even live in the village anymore. I mean, she lives out there. Has anybody seen her for a while, they asked? And no, not really, but they didn't think that she was, they felt like she was still with them on the earth. And so they decided they were going to send Growing Flower and Little Red Bear and Proud When She Dances off to go see Good Earth Woman and see if she had, because the thing was that she was a medicine woman and she knew all kinds of things. And I don't know why they never thought of her before, but she definitely was very, very wise. And so they attended to the protocol. They knew that they would bring something for Good Earth Woman because they were asking something of her, and it's always good to bring something if you're going to ask something of someone. The laws of reciprocity were important. And so they got a little package together with some food and some tea, and off they went to go see Good Earth Woman. And as they found her place in the woods, they just remarked about how peaceful and serene and calm it was, and they noticed that she had a nice, thriving garden there, and there were a few little animals around, and it just was such a nice little setting. And so they got there, and Good Earth Woman welcomed them, had them come in, and as was the way, you never kind of really entered into the conversation right away. You just inquired about each other and wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable, and they had some tea. And then Good Earth Woman gave them permission by saying, I know that you came here to kind of ask me some things today. I mean, nobody's visited me for a long time, so I'm making an assumption that you want something from me, and what is it that you came here for? And so Growing Flower started to talk, and she was explaining what was happening in the village. And Good Earth Woman said, yes, I'm aware of that. In fact, that's why I moved out here. It was very painful for me to watch. But I haven't had anybody come out here to, visit me for my medicines or anything either. And Growing Flower said, yes. She goes, we just thought about it. We hadn't seen you for a while, and, But here's all the things that we've tried, and we came to you because we know that you're wise and that maybe you could tell us what will happen and how we can fix the problems that we're having. And Good Earth Woman thought about it for a while, and she said, I'm really, really sorry. There's not really anything that I can tell you. It sounds like you've tried all kinds of things, and I don't really have the answer for you. But as they were leaving, and Growing Flower and Little Red Bear and Proud When She Dances all said that they would come and visit again, Good Earth Woman said something. She said, I don't have the answer, she said, but there is one among you. And that's all she would say. And so Growing Flower, Little Red Bear, Proud When She Dances, they all went back to the village. And, of course, everybody was there. Granddaughter of the Moon and First Star of the Night and the Strong-Legged Wolf and the one whose voice we hear. They all came rushing toward Growing Flower and Little Red Bear and Proud When She Dances and said, okay, what did you learn? Because they were so desperate for an answer. And Growing Flower just sighed and she said, I'm so sorry. She did not have an answer for us. Good Earth Woman, she was kind and she gave us these other medicines to bring back with us, but she did not have the answer, she said. But she said the strangest thing when we were leaving. She said, there is one among us. And, of course, everybody said, well, who is it? She says, well, she didn't know. She didn't say who it was. And so that was kind of the end of it. People kind of went off on their ways. But as Growing Flower was going home, she noticed Strong-Legged Wolf. And she thought about it for a while. And she thought, Strong-Legged Wolf, he's got to be the one. He's got to be the one. He's got to be the one because, look, it's even in his name. He is the leader. Strong-Legged Wolf always leads us everywhere. That's it. He's the one. But then she began to think a little more, and she thought, yeah, well, he can get pretty vicious sometimes, so probably not. I've seen that snap of his. But on the off chance that he was the one, she determined that she was going to treat Strong-Legged Wolf with extraordinary respect. The next day she was walking and she saw First Star of the Night, and she thought, of course, it's her. It's First Star of the Night. I don't know why I didn't. She guides us. I mean, she is, she's our North Star. She is what kind of keeps us focused. I should have known that it was First Star of the Night. And yet First Star of the Night also had those pointy edges, and so maybe it wasn't her, but on the off chance that it was, she was going to treat First Star of the Night with extraordinary respect. And later in the day, she was walking and she saw the one whose voice we hear. And she thought, it's him. It's definitely him. The one whose voice we hear, of course. He always has wise things to say. Yeah, but when he doesn't feel like he's getting listened to, he can be, that voice can turn pretty loud and sharp and not helpful. And so it's probably not him. But on the off chance that it was the one whose voice we hear, she began to treat him with extraordinary respect. And as the days went by, she went through everybody. She had found, she thought, Proud When She Dances, it's got to be her. She thought that maybe it was a Turtle, because some of the things that Turtle did. But the same thing happened. She kept eliminating him. She had been through everybody in the village. And one night she was kind of just really beside herself because she was so disappointed that she hadn't been able to discover the one. And she was going to bed that night, and she said, I've been through everybody in the village. And then it dawned on her. It was like, what if it's me? What if I'm the one? Oh, no, I couldn't be the one. But what if I am? And on the off chance that it was her, she began to treat herself with extraordinary respect. They don't know when or how it happened, but pretty soon there was a shift in the way that the village was operating. The gardens started to come back, and the young people were treating the elders with more respect, as they treated each other with respect, and they treated themselves with respect. And this village became a thriving village once again. Good Earth Woman arrived one day for a visit, and she just said, "I see you found the one."
Oh, that's a wonderful story. It's so inspiring.
Thanks. And I like it because we are all the one.
And that's what I got from it. That's what I got. Not only are we all the one, but once we're treating ourselves that way, with that respect and care, then we can so much easier afford to treat each other that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Kathryn.
Beautiful. So as we finish up, have we missed anything you wanted to share? Maybe you want to tell people how to connect with you, or maybe how they can help you to broaden the reach of your work?
You know, I think that they can get a hold of me through International Children's Month, or they can reach out to me. I have an email, scrossbear at centurytel, CENTURYTEL.net, and I have an organization called Strongheart Resource Development. I do not have a web page for that, but if you get a hold of me, I can tell you what that is about.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your story, first of all, but I enjoyed talking to you about all this work that you're doing. And I think as activists, many who listen to this program who are active in the world and caring about the world, I think we have to think about our children. And when I say that as a woman who doesn't have a child, but it's really our children, the ones who are inheriting our planet. We have to keep them as part of the conversation, even if we're holding place for them as we go forward. And I thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Kathryn. And you're right. They're all our children, right? They're all our collective human future. So it is a great honor to be able to be in this time and to help create and develop the new story of where we go from here.
Excellent. You're listening to Heart of Mind, radio for the new millennium. I'm Kathryn Davis, and today my guest is Yvette Dubel. And Yvette is an engaging speaker, published author, presenter, and strategy consultant with experience facilitating workshops and decades committed to social innovation initiatives. She is creator of the Empowered Innovation System for Personal Information and as We the World coordinator for the Campaign for Freedom. Returning to her roots as artist-researcher, she is finding inspiration from artists like William Pope L's The Black Factory. Following the paths of art as solution and art as philosophy, she is launching a new series of free introductory and advanced programs to support a movement and begin raising funds for the Campaign for Freedom. Most notably, the first annual Freedom Fest, Films and World Music to Inspire with Freedom Summit that invites increasing inclusion to inform a compassionate freedom movement that works for all. And that is quite a lot, Yvette. I'm so happy to be able to speak to you about it because you seem to be engaged in a lot of different ways, but most notably with regard to creative expression. So before we get to the work you're doing now, give us a little bit of background on how you migrated into this particular area of creativity, even though you do have your strategy consulting work? Maybe it's all a part and parcel.
It really is really trying to bring it all together. And so with We the World, that's really what this journey is about for me, is bringing all these diverse pieces together. So my background, my way background was first in art. And so I was a painting major, and I started out selling my paintings, and that was where my creative expression was focused. I've always loved music, but I'm not a performer. William Pope L is a performance artist, but I've always been interested in performance and conceptual art. I just didn't quite have the confidence, I guess, to give myself permission to dive into what I really wanted to do at that time. So I started out doing art, painting, selling my paintings, doing commission work and doing shows and things like that. And I got married young, so we were a new family. So I had to take, my whole family would have to go. My mom and my little brother would also often go, along with our Rottweiler. So I started out as a visual artist, focusing on visual artist practice and then writing. As I was raising my kids, I homeschooled my kids, so I was an advocate for freedom in birthing, freedom in education. That got me involved in community program development. I think one of my first projects was working, which was probably in the 90s, doing the welfare to work sort of policies and programs, and I was in Atlanta. So entrepreneurial development, working with some of those women who weren't awarded grants through the program. And I got involved in what we used to call bootstrapping using technology. And then that led me to get involved with the International Open Source, Free and Open Source Software Foundation. I think they're now called the Open Source Solutions Foundation. So that got me involved in tech research, looking at social issues. So that was really the leveling up of my involvement with social innovation initiatives. So looking at how to use information technology to bridge the digital divide, to empower communities to be able to address issues more efficiently, to increase access using technology. I guess that gets us sort of to like the last 10 years.
Well, that's great. That's great. And tell us how you found yourself being connected to We the World and the We campaign at we.net.
Oh, wow. So many years ago, someone had told me about Humanity Team and suggested that I look at that. And I'd forgotten about it. And then just one day when I was following links from the Humanity Team website, I found the We the World website and signed up. And Angel reached out to me and invited me. And then I was just in the course of me sharing a bit of like my passion and what I was into, it was suggested that the Freedom Campaign would be a good fit because freedom has kind of been a theme in my life. The pursuit of personal freedom has been a big part of my own journey, both professionally and personally. So I clearly resonated with that theme. And so when Rick and I think there were a couple other people in that meeting that suggested that, and Sue was one. And so I accepted because, as I said, freedom had just been such a persistent theme in my work and what I was interested in. And so this has given me sort of a focus, and it's a broad focus. The Campaign for Freedom has given me a very broad focus to start to try to weave these threads together into something that I feel that is the answer to a need now with the Freedom Summit and the Freedom Festival.
Excellent. And before we get into the actual work that you are doing right now, I would love to know what freedom is.
Well, the idea for me is that it's not for any one person. The objective of the project, I have a podcast called Freedom Matters as sort of a precursor to the event. And in each conversation, I invite people to talk to me about what freedom means to them, because my whole goal is to develop a compassionate freedom movement for a world with the objective and the goal of creating a world where we have a freedom that works for all. So in my work with Empowered Innovation, I look at freedom as a flavor or a spice. And so it's part of what I call a success buffet. And in that buffet, you have like entree. And so for some people, their career or their business might be that entree. For some people, it may be their family. So that would be a dish of like macaroni and cheese, that everybody knows what that is. But everybody's way they would flavor that would be different. You could do a curry-inspired macaroni and cheese. And so that's kind of where I think of freedom. It could be like a curry, which is a combination of spices, and these are Indian, I don't know if you know Indian food, these are Indian spices.
I do.
Or gram masala, which is its own spice, but also can be a flavor. So you have a masala chicken dish, for example. So it's expanding the way that we think about these things. That's really what empowered innovation and what my work is about. It's about personal innovation and helping people to increase their capacity to innovate themselves, because innovating our society or organizations depends on each individual being able to make that journey. And I feel that We the World gives a really good context for that, because part of that, however you're defining success and freedom, needs to include how are we working together? How do we go from me to we and whatever it is that we're seeking to do?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And in your own life, how do you relate freedom and really share that thought, that idea, perhaps with young people, maybe with your children or with other people who are starting out in life and sometimes feel that they have to conform to all of these prescriptive behaviors and values? How would you inspire someone to seek out their own internal capacity for freedom?
Well, one of the big things is to think differently about what freedom is. Instead of thinking about freedom as something that someone else defines outside of you, to look and see what makes you feel free. So the first thing is, of course, freedom of mind, the freedom to think what I want to think, to put my attention where I want to put it, as opposed to feeling like my attention is being controlled by somebody else, someone else telling me what it is that I need to pay attention to. So that's a big part of it, is like sort of that idea of personal autonomy, personal freedom, freedom in time, that's a big part of what makes me feel free. And so one of the reasons that I like to encourage people to think about their success buffet, because freedom is likely a part of that. But is freedom going to be a dish for you, or is it going to be a flavor? Is it a spice? And then thinking about how do you want to integrate that? So if it's time freedom, you want the freedom to be able to follow your own passion. What kind of dish do you need to be thinking about with freedom as a main ingredient? Do you understand what I'm saying? So a career path that did not allow you freedom, if freedom is important to you, then you know that's not going to be a good fit. I've been an entrepreneur because I'm not a great employee. I don't like showing up on somebody else's timeline. I like to have control over those things. And so for me, I knew that being an entrepreneur was my path.
And let's talk a little bit more about the work that you're actually doing and this Freedom Summit. Tell us about that.
Well, in the very early conceptual stages of this at this point, and really just talking about it, inviting people that would be interested in co-creating. I'm learning more about some of the things that I want to make a part of that event. One of the things that I experienced in doing workshops, that I noticed that a lot of innovation-focused events tend to be very siloed. So they're industry-specific or they're profession-specific. You don't see a lot of innovation events that are broad and inclusive. So my inspiration was a social responsibility and innovation summit. So that's really long. And Freedom Summit kind of embodied all of that. So at this point, it's really having conversations with people who share the vision, who understand why this is so needed, because so many people are feeling so disempowered by what's happening politically that we have to find a way to move forward together and to get the work done. So the goal of the summit would be for people to come together and make action plans, to do some of the inner work to clarify what the goals are in a way that's productive. So like right now, I just started taking a lab called System Scripting Lab to learn how to make the hidden visual, so that when you have these town hall or discussion panels, to be able to help make visual the energy that's moving as people are having these conversations, so that we can have a conversation about what happens in the discussion panel with an eye towards making action plans and having follow-up events where we report back on what we got done.
Well, that does sound very exciting. I might be reaching out to you on that one. Freedom is one of my, I would say it's at the top of my menu choices. So I do understand what you're speaking of. And also being an artist, I went to art school and was in the commercial art for a little while, but found that very stifling and was not able to really stay in the field for very long in terms of having wanted to have an artistic career. So I really love your ideas in terms of art as solution, art as philosophy, and then looking into it as a performance art, because for many years I've been regarding my life as my canvas, as it were, and everything I do as a performance within the canvas of my life. And so I really relate to that very strongly. And I'd love to know more about your work and how you integrate art or expression into your daily work, your daily life, your family. Really, how does it make your life what it is?
Well, the basis of pretty much the way that I live is art-based inquiry. And so that's why I give myself the title of artist researcher. And so around 2012, I contributed with Dr. Pauline Fuchema some work exploring social justice and education. But even before that, I was working with a Dutch fellow researcher, Ronald Wolperijs. He created something called the theory of attention. And the system scribing that I mentioned before is kind of an offshoot from the Presencing Institute, which is Otto Scharmer's Theory U. And so I was drawing on that work and exploring it through my artist practice and created something called cultural fusion, artist philosophy, and cultural fusion soul food. So it was a model conceptualizing things like freedom and being able to explore them in this sort of quantum mechanics dynamic that would make it more accessible to people. So talking about flavors and ingredients and using that kind of metaphorical universe to talk about these more complex, nuanced assets and tangible assets. So I was looking at poverty abatement, and I was very interested in the academic social research side of that. But there was a gap between that inquiry and the solution. And that was where my strategy consulting came in, it was my effort to try and bridge those. I was interested in the inquiry, but I also was interested in that inquiry leading to solutions. So I was inspired by protest art. I think it's called institutional critique. But instead of criticizing and just commenting on the social problems, I was interested in how to use art to actually explore the path to solutions to those issues. So using art to define them, and then using the artist practice to guide solutions. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It's a little difficult for me at this moment to envision what that looks like, but I guess that's part of the process to see what people can do.
No, that's you got it. That's the point, is that we don't know. And the artist's journey, as you know, as an artist, it's about going into something. You don't know what you're going to create. You have an idea, but you don't know what that thing is. So what we're facing now is we have to create something as a civilization, as society, that we have no historical precedent for. We have to envision something that is at this moment unknown to us and figure out, how do we get there? I believe, and my experience has taught me, that art is the way that I get there. I can go into the unknown with no resistance through art. But it's hard to trust a person to take you into the unknown and trust that they're going to get you somewhere you want to be. But if you trust art as practice, it's a mental model shift that I'm trying to teach people, and that's what Empowered Innovation is about. Is it a system that I created to teach that makes it a lot more practical, and it's not as abstract. So we focus on your goals, and we focus on a strategy to clarify what it is that you want, and then I put that into this food metaphor that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. If you could create something small on the spot, I'm putting you on the spot, but something small that our listeners could do so that they can go through a process that would help them to understand it better and maybe have an outcome that would be beneficial for them.
Oh, absolutely. So that is what the free introductory programs that you mentioned before, that's what those are about. So I have different principles and keys that I give. And so one exercise is with the 7 principles. So new value can be accessed when you consider that something else is possible, when you can just consider that there's another possibility other than what you see. And the actual principle is that new value can be accessed when you ask, what if there's another possibility? So the first thing is that I ask you to think about a situation where you could apply that, where you feel stuck, like some area of your life where you feel stuck. And so you think about that, and then you consider this principle. And so before you actually tackle trying to figure it out with your mind, I invite people to doodle and draw and visualize that situation as an object. And so you could pick a tree or whatever. So you do a little doodle of that thing as an object, and then draw something that represents you in relation to that object. And then think about where the new possibility is. So then you want to, in that scenario, whatever the scenario is, pick someone else or another perspective that's involved. And so instead of looking at it from your perspective where you're looking at the problem, pick another perspective in that scenario. It could be through another person or another job related to completing whatever the thing is, and then draw that perspective. And then describe the situation again from that other perspective.
So that makes it very practical and tangible, even though there's this creative flavor to it all. It gives people a sense that, okay, I can do this, I can embark on this project, which sounds really quite exciting.
I'm creating a series of landing pages. I've created something called the Empowered Innovation Institute that I'll be using to add more programming to. And so there'll always be free content and free resources there. Because again, the idea is to create a place that can help people address the issues that are pressing for them, that are of concern to them, and at the same time, make that journey from me to we, and thinking about those personal goals and those personal things in the context of us and we, what's good for all of us. That's the thing that I'm really excited about in terms of working with We the World is I feel like everything in my life has really been about that. It's been about my personal journey towards that. And so a big part of my artist practice now in terms of, I guess, my own creative challenge for myself is my struggle in making that journey from me to we and where it is that I have a hard time, and using art to share some of that and to find inspiration in it instead of feeling stuck.
That's wonderful. For me, I think one of the things that I like about the We campaign is even in this experience talking to you, it shows people that you can reach inside of yourself and find your own gift. You don't have to copy anybody else. Find your own gift and see how to express that gift or talent or passion in the world, but to do it for the benefit of the whole. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to imagine that we can actually make a contribution, but I feel confident that if everyone, even if their piece might seem small to them, it can be huge as far as how it impacts each other and impacts the world. And I just think it's really important for people to realize that they in fact can use their artistic expression as a way of making life better and the world better on a greater scale than maybe they might have thought. So I think that
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that
I agree.
Yeah, it's pretty important the work that you're doing and that I think everyone at the We campaign is doing. So we mentioned the Freedom Fest, Film and World Music to Inspire, and the Freedom Summit. So if people want to engage with that, maybe there's a certain point in time when they would need to reach out to you, or should they maybe go to the we.net website and just sign up for the Freedom Campaign?
Either one of those is great. If you go to we.net and sign up for the Freedom Campaign, I will follow up and reach out to you. You can reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram, DM me, and I'll reply. I will be setting up a landing page to offer like an incentive to people who want to sign up and as a thank you gift for taking a short survey. So I'll have that and I'll start promoting that on Instagram again within the next couple of weeks. So just if anybody feels interested in any of those, just reach out and connect because we need you to do this. And to piggyback off of what you just said, I think that each one of us has a piece of what we need to heal our world. And that is one of the reasons that I have focused on inclusion for almost 30 years. Wow. It's very clear to me that the more people that you get at the table who are committed to bringing their better selves, we can get a lot done. And we can get it done faster than anybody would ever imagine.
Absolutely. And also, I think as we have more options on the table, there will be more room to do positive things, and people might not be so quick to fall into the kind of toxic behavior and toxic communication that we see a lot of in the online space. I like the idea that you're having these landing pages and people can begin to connect, and hopefully we will all become so much more interdependent, interconnected, and providing opportunities for each other to shine. And that's really what I love about what I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, also everybody being committed to doing the personal and internal work that we need to do to show up as our better selves more often as a solution to the toxicity that you were just referring to. So absolutely.
Excellent. So we are just about at the end of our talk, and I want to make sure that I covered everything. Was there something more that you wanted to share with our audience?
Wow, I feel like I've shared so much. I don't want to overwhelm anyone. But Freedom Matters podcast, definitely check me out. And if anybody's interested in having a conversation with me there to continue this conversation, I'd love to talk to you.
And where is that podcast?
Freedom Matters, you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. So anywhere you find podcasts, do a search. You can always just use whatever your favorite search engine. Look for Freedom Matters with Yvette Dubel.
Excellent. And that's YvetteDubel. So thank you so much for making the time to talk to me today.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you so much, Erin, for having me. I really appreciate it.